I just graduated from medical school, and my new hospital has some very strange rules. You probably think that all doctors are filthy rich, because I sure as hell did in the beginning. 8 years and a fistful of premature gray hairs later, I'm just a few $100,000 poorer than broke. That would matter if I had a family to provide for, but the long hours in med school have led to an end of my last relationship and a countdown on the shelf life of my ovaries. I was in a take what I can get and be grateful situation. So when St. Francis Hospital in Charleston, West Virginia offered me a position, I packed my sad life into 3 bags and sought opportunity in the hills of Appalachia. 19 of us started in July, and 13 have since dropped out. I like to think of myself as the rat that wouldn't drown. Some people broke inside after watching children die because they weren't good enough doctors quite yet. Everyone has to be a rookie at some point. It's doubly hard when you have to inform the dead child's parents, who then beg you to tell them different news, or scream that they want to die and just please kill them with whatever drug takes away the pain. But most of my incoming class couldn't handle the chief of medicine. Dr. Vivian Scrit is, without a doubt, the biggest bitch I've ever met. Now I know why. 19 of you start today, and we've got a pool going with bets on how long each of you will last, she told us on day 1. Don't feel any pressure, folks. I've talked with each of you in private, and my expectations are very low. She peered condescendingly over her thin spectacles, snorted, then turned around to walk away. You should know when to follow me and when to stay away, because I'm not going to waste time explaining what you should figure out on your own. We gawked at one another, all feeling weak and small, then scampered after her. I was last in line, and felt out of place taking even that much. You should have the list of expectations for St. Francis, Dr. Scrit explained as she walked on, not bothering to look at us as she talked. I printed 18 sets of rules so that you would have to challenge one another for them, knowing that one of you would be left behind. An icy cold settled in the pit of my stomach as I saw everyone look down at a list of rules that only I did not have. If you cannot follow these rules, there will be no place for you in this hospital. It most likely means that you are unsuited to be a doctor, and should consider a profession that demands a weaker mental aptitude. At that, she turned around to face us all. And if you think that I'm the type to give second chances after a mistake, you're woefully underprepared for the world of medicine. She stopped and looked at each of us in turn, apparently expecting a response that no one dared to offer. Well, she shut out in exasperation, why are you standing here? People are dying. Get to work. No one wanted to show me their list of rules, so I had to wait until one of my classmates died. It took nearly a week. I was working at 3 a.m. Because I had only been on the clock for 10 hours. I was rushing into another room so that a patient wouldn't know I was Googling his symptoms. Doctors do this far more than you realize. When I saw Myron by himself in an OR, I stopped immediately. Myron? I squeaked. What the hell is that? His arms were working furiously, but his back was turned toward me, so I couldn't see what he was doing. Something felt wrong. Myron was the pick of our litter. He'd been top 10 in his class at Johns Hopkins, and he would remind us of that fact in exchange for answering the questions that we were too terrified to ask Dr. Scrit. Slowly, I approached Myron, not wanting to startle him. We're really busy right now, is there something you need help with? He showed no outward signs that he had heard me. Instead, he kept pumping away furiously at the task at hand. When I was 5 steps from him, I could see drops of blood flying over his shoulder. Which made no sense, since he had been alone in the room. Myron? I whispered, barely loudly enough to hear my own words. I slowly crept around his left side, finally bringing the scene into full view. Myron's abdomen was split from sternum to pelvis. His esophagus spilled out, and his stomach sat on the table. A nest of quivering small intestine led from the bottom of his stomach back into his shredded torso. Myron showed no outward signs of pain. He was too busy working. He clutched his own stomach tightly in his left hand, the folds squirting through his fingers like unbaked bread. His right hand was working furiously with a scalpel, sawing his organ into ribbons. Rivers of sweat poured down his forehead with the intensity of the effort. I tried to scream, but it only came out as a moan. That was enough to get Myron to notice me. Slowly, he raised his head. Slowly, he smiled. It was not a happy smile. With eye contact locked on me, he licked his lips, angrily stabbed a piece of his stomach, and lifted it to his mouth. He bit. He chewed. Then he lunged. But most people don't know how to move with their innards splayed out for all the world to see, and this was his downfall. Myron's tattered guts caught on the corner of the table, and he fell to the floor. Finally, he screamed. I had learned very early in my medical career that compartmentalization is indispensable. That instinct took over my brain in the moment, and I acted clinically. Myron was still grasping his scalpel with his right hand. I kicked it hard, and it flew out of his hands. He stared at me and screeched. With his entrails still wrapped around the table, I figured my best option was retreat. I moved to the back of the room as a doctor and a janitor burst in. And in possibly the most shocking moment of the night, I realized that they were not shocked. Myron was anesthetized, subdued, and extracted within a minute of their arrival. For a moment, I was alone with a pool of blood and diced stomach lining. And something else. A sheet of paper lay on the floor, its corner just touching the edge of the creeping blood. Myron had dropped his list of rules. The practical part of my brain continued to drive me. I snatched the paper from the ground, then quickly exited the room, taking care to avoid the puddle. I didn't want to leave any bloody footprints in my wake. I knew that I had to read the list as soon as I was able to find 30 uninterrupted seconds to myself. 3 hours later, I had my opportunity and ducked into a janitor's closet. With a shaking, exhausted hand, I pulled the chain on a bare bulb, tried to ignore the noxious smell of leaking ammonia, and read. St. Francis Hospital Rules, Guidelines for New Doctors. 1. Never, under any circumstances, share your copy of the rules with anyone else. 2. If any other doctor displays erratic behavior, leave the area immediately. Do not make eye contact. 3. If any other doctor is approached or detained by someone in a janitor's uniform, do not interfere. Never ask about that former doctor again. 4. Never touch any seemingly abandoned Reese's peanut butter cups. Those are Dr. Scrit's favorite candy. 5. Any child that dies in St. Francis Hospital must be cremated within 120 minutes of official time of death. If you suspect this rule has been broken, alert Dr. Scrit, and the hospital will be evacuated. 6. There is no children's burn unit at St. Francis Hospital. If you find yourself there, continue walking until you return to familiar territory. This usually requires traveling in a straight line down the central hallway for 47 minutes. You will not reach a wall during that interval. 7. This rule is on a need-to-know basis. 8. A small quantity of sulfuric acid is kept in every room. This is only intended for use on patients with severed spinal cords. If they attack, a hypodermic injection of H2SO4 into the cranium is the only way to subdue the subject. 9. The morgue must house at least 13 cadavers at all times. 10. If you find yourself on the hospital roof with no memory of how you got there, you have only 2 choices. Either wait for an extraction team to find you, or jump 4 stories to the sidewalk on Court Street. 11. If you see room 1913, do not look directly at the numbers. Do not open the door. This is, by far, the most important rule. My heart stopped when the door opened. Dr. Scrit was staring at me. What little emotion shined through her exterior seemed to be surprise. We both stood, frozen, for 5 seconds of agonized silence. Dr. Aphelis, she drawled gravely, I'm shocked. She stared down at the blood-stained list of rules in my hand. I reached for words. Any words, because literally any response would make me look less guilty than I did in that moment, staring up at my boss's boss and saying literally nothing in my defense as she weighed my soul with her eyes. And I said nothing. You took a list that wasn't yours, and were nowhere to be found after your coworker experienced such an unnatural incident. Dr. Scrit huffed through her nose. It seems that you're willing to do the unthinkable in the name of getting what you need. And Myron couldn't even follow the most important rule. She clenched her teeth. I had a 4-year streak of predicting which incoming doctors will break the soonest. This will ruin my chances in the office pool. The ghost of a smile graced her lips before she turned to leave. Get to work, doctor. You've got 3 hours left on your shift, and those symptoms aren't going to Google themselves. I didn't realize that I'd been holding my breath until I heard my own gasp for air. Shaking, I slowly emerged from the janitor's closet. I quickly stuffed the list of rules back into my pocket, reflecting on the fact that I had just achieved what might be considered an actual win. Perhaps, just maybe, I would keep my head above water at St. Francis after all. I turned to head down the hall when I stopped in my tracks. Everything was unfamiliar. What the hell had happened? I glanced all around. The design of the hallway was familiar, but everything was off. I could hear people talking in the rooms, but the immediate vicinity was devoid of all people but myself. Nothing made sense. Then I looked up. And I'll be honest, I peed just a little when I read the sign. St. Francis Hospital. Children's Burn Unit. My husband brought home a fake daughter. This is not my child. That was all I could think. Honey, said my husband. Is everything all right? Who is this? I said, staring at the little girl I'd never seen before, standing in my house, dressed in my daughter's clothes. Where is Liza? My husband gave me a worried look, and the girl who was not Liza looked positively terrified. What do you mean? Said my husband. Are you feeling all right? Why was he evading my question? Why couldn't he just answer? I took a deep breath, tried to remain calm. I'll be all right, I said, as soon as you tell me where my daughter is. My husband frowned, and the little girl's eyes welled up with moisture. My husband placed a protective hand over her shoulder, and leaned down to whisper in her ear. Go on upstairs, honey, he said. Mommy's not feeling well. The girl wasted no time in doing what he said. She clutched her schoolbooks to her chest and barreled past me, rushing up the stairs. I heard the door of my daughter's room slam. The look on my husband's face was a mix of pity and restrained anger. You haven't been taking your medication, he said. Don't try to deny it, I can see it in your eyes. I waved my hand in a dismissive gesture. I don't need them, I said. They make my mind all fuzzy. The anger on my husband's face became less restrained. Well-etched frown lines beneath his lips deepened. Do you remember what happened the last time you said that? He asked. The suggestion was enough. A swarm of shattered and confused images flooded my mind, like the wave of nausea that comes before vomit. My husband screaming, covered in blood. Look what you made me do. He was shrieking. Look what you made me do. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, and before I knew what had happened, I found myself falling backwards into my husband's arms. Hot tears were streaming down my cheeks, and my body convulsed with violent sobs. My husband gently brushed my hair and whispered in my ear. Shoo, he cooed. It's not real, honey. I promise that it's not real. I silently nodded my assent. I let him carry me up to our bedroom and lay me gently down on the bed. He walked over to the dresser where he kept the cocktail of drugs that I took every day to maintain my sanity. I swallowed them gratefully. Soon my mind was going fuzzy. I could feel myself becoming a pliable zombie that could be told anything, made to do anything. Of course I knew that it was wrong, that girl was not Liza. I knew that it wasn't me who had been driven insane by our daughter's death, but my husband. I knew he had kidnapped that girl when she was a toddler, and brainwashed her into believing she was Liza. But, most importantly, I knew that if I didn't take my pills, if I shattered his precariously built illusion, that he would kill the girl and start all over again. Just like he did the last time. I think I'm the Antichrist. Everyone had been talking about the news. Pastor Jude had come out and said it. He said he spoke to God, and God told him that right here, in our little town, the Antichrist was among us. Everybody knew everybody in my town, which meant everyone was suspicious of everyone. That was when kids started avoiding me. They stopped sitting next to me in Sunday school, or playing hopscotch with me after church. Even my own brother avoided me. He would only say what he normally told me. He was the favorite because Mom and Dad only wanted boys. He even said if he had a daughter he would damn her to hell. I didn't know why everyone ignored me. Well, everybody except for Micah. He was the only kid in town who didn't avoid me. One day, in Sunday school, as our teacher was babbling on and on about something or other, I was mindlessly doodling in my book as Micah sat next to me. Claudia, he whispered, nudging my elbow. Pissed. Claudes, cut it out. Stop drawing that creepy stuff. I ignored him until Elder Green was stopped in front of me. Claudia, he said in a warning tone. I switched the pencil to my right hand, like I was always told to do. No, not that. What's that you're drawing? Oh, nothing much really, Elder Green. I was just doodling. Is that so, Ms.? Keller? Well, let's see what this is, then. He picked up my book, and I gasped along with the rest of my class. Did I really draw that? As I stared at my drawing, the pointed devil horns and sharp red eyes staring back at me, I couldn't help but think one thought. I am a really good artist. Micah scooched his seat away from me a bit. Ms. Keller, I'm afraid you can't join us if you draw satanic runes like this. Elder Green said, just as Pastor Jude walked into our classroom. Now what's this, little Claudia? He asked, placing his hands on my shoulders. Nothing, Pastor this one here has been drawing satanic imagery in her book, Pastor Jude. It's really quite concerning. Elder Green interrupted. Elder, you mustn't interrupt Claudia like that. Come with me, dear. He took my wrist and led me out of class. We sat down in the spare room, the one with no windows and a lock on the door. None of the other doors have locks on them. Was I really bad, Father? I asked. No, my Claudia. He placed his hand on my leg and tightened his grip when I tried to move away. But remember, demons go after those who are weak in faith, the ones who have fought the hardest battles. The demons go after those who have fought the hardest battles? Are they protecting them, Father? No, my Claudia. Demons do not protect. Angels protect. Demons are horrible creatures, they feed off those who cannot fight back. But how do I know who is a demon and who is an angel, Father? Pastor Jude brushed his fingers through my hair. Well, my Claudia, Just then, Micah knocked on the door. Claudia? Claudia! He started before Pastor Jude reluctantly got up and opened the door. He was holding a small chocolate egg in his hands. Sunday school ended. They were giving out chocolate eggs and I saved you one. It got a little melty, though. He reached his hand out to me, offering the melted chocolate that had been nearly liquefied in his sweaty little palms. No thanks. I said. Well, Micah said, licking the chocolate off his hands. Ready to walk home? My ma said I can walk home all by myself as long as I go with you. We can go to the playground on the way. Okay. I have to go now, Father. Goodbye. As I left to walk home with Micah, Pastor Jude grabbed my hand. Goodbye, my Claudia. He said, kissing my hand. I pulled it away and hurried to catch up with Micah. As we walked to his house, we talked. Do you really think there's an Antichrist in this town? He asked. What even is an Antichrist, anyway? It's someone who does the opposite of what God wants. Oh. Who is it, then? I don't know. Maybe it's me. That's why everyone's ignoring me. I don't think you're an Antichrist. You're only 9. I'm a whole 4 months older than you. Plus, I'll be 10 in a week. April 3rd, Micah shrugged. Just then, we heard a dreaded sound. The sound of Stephen Shepard's old pickup truck. Stephen Shepard was the meanest teenager in town, who loved to pick on kids. Especially me and Micah. Ooh, look who it is! He mocked, stepping out of his truck. Whittle Micah with his whittle girlfriend. Shut up, Stephen. Micah said. Stephen picked him up with one hand and threw him to the ground. He tried to get back up, but Stephen stepped on his face with his big dirty boots. And what are you gonna do about it, little girl? He asked, as Micah tried to fight him off. He kicked Micah square in the mouth, making one of his teeth fall out. Then, he pushed me to the ground. He sat on top of me and pulled a pocket knife out of his jeans as I flew my arms in the air. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop! I screamed, a sudden volt of energy soaring through me. Suddenly Stephen was flung back like a rag doll. I didn't know what happened. I was just so angry. What is this? He took off dirt-stained white tank top to reveal 3 big scratch marks on his back. The rumors are right. He screamed. You're the Antichrist. He ran away, and I helped Micah up as he wiped blood off his face. Whoa. He said. How'd you do that? That night, as I brushed my teeth, I stared into the mirror. The rumors are right. You're the Antichrist. Could it be true? Was that why Pastor Jude always paid more attention to me? Because he was scared of me? Just then, as I looked at my reflection, I noticed a figure standing just behind me. The lights were off, so I couldn't make it out, but I knew what it was. It towered over me, staring at me through its gaunt, sunken eyes, its pale and bony hands resting on my shoulder. I looked behind me. Nothing. I looked into the mirror and there it was. But I wasn't scared. Demons do not protect. Echoed through my head, but I ignored it. It inched closer towards me and reached its hand out of the mirror for me to take. I reached back, but as soon as I touched it, there was a sudden jolt of energy, and it was gone. Even as I slept, I couldn't get the imagery out of my mind. I had seen hell, and I wasn't afraid. Who really knew the difference between angels and demons, anyway? Where was the line between them? Pastor Jude didn't know. Elder Green didn't know. Nobody knew. But I knew one thing for sure. I was the Antichrist. The next morning, I woke up in the back of my parents' car. My younger brother sat next to me, but he didn't look at me. "Where are we going, Mom?" I asked. "To church, sweetheart." "Church? But it's Monday." "I know. We have something else for you in store today." As we left the car, I noticed all the other townspeople staring at us. Some pulled their children away from me, others pointed and whispered to each other. I saw Micah racing towards us on his bike. "Claudia! Claudia! What are you guys doing?" I tried to turn to talk to him, but my parents pulled me away and carried me into church. "The Keller family," Pastor Jude said in a calm voice as we walked into the church. "I'm glad you got my message so quickly, Mr. Keller. Now my Claudia, will you come with me?" I took his hand even though I didn't want to. He took me into the room with no windows and a lock on the door. "Father, am I the Antichrist?" I asked as soon as we were alone. I don't know how to answer that, my Claudia," he said. "I always told you those weak in faith would be the first preyed upon by demons. You must have faith in the Heavenly Father, my Claudia. I'm afraid you must be in this room by yourself for some time. Solitude is when we are best connected to God. Please no, Father. I'm afraid of this room, I don't want to be alone. You must be alone, my Claudia." "I'm sorry," he said, and kissed me on the cheek. As he removed the door handles so I couldn't leave, I pounded on the door. I sobbed as the lights all dimmed, leaving me in total darkness. I tried to pray to the Heavenly Father to let me out. I am the Antichrist. I thought. If I really was the Antichrist, why would he listen to my prayers? Hours must have passed. I had no idea how long I really was in there. I had no way to tell the time. I was so afraid and lost. Why was everyone scared of me? Why did I have to be born the Antichrist? I didn't do anything. Suddenly, I heard voices outside of the room. Pastor Jude's. "This child is the Antichrist. She will be the end of our town, the country, the world even. Do we just sit back and take it? It is in God's will to do anything to protect his children, and I say this child is only going to harm you. I say we kill the child, in the name of God," he said, and I heard cheers and applause.